My favorite quote when learning about crisis management as a student of public relations was one by Henry Kissinger, who famously said, "Next week, there can't be any crisis. My schedule is already full." But, friends, next week, for him, the Watergate scandal broke. Problem, issue, emergency, crisis. These are all words that none of us would like to ever hear in our lives, be it in our personal life or in our professional life. And yet, I'm sure that all of us would have had to deal with one or the other of these at some point in our lives. In business as in life, crises often come unannounced. They don't come knocking on the door to say, "Hey, here I am." No. Of course, you could be one of those fortunate people who has never had a crisis in your life. And if you have never been faced with a crisis, you are blessed. But believe me, if you have faced with a crisis and dealt with one, you are even more blessed. For I see opportunity in every crisis, the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to grow, the opportunity to become a better human being, a better individual, a better professional. That, to me, is the magic of crisis management. That, to me, is a great blessing. That, to me, is something which will always help you as you play in life, as you go about the business of living, both professionally and personally. Crises are of different types. There are man-made crises, natural disasters, terror attacks, something we see increasingly these days, hacking, again increasingly these days, rumors, misdeeds of maybe a single or few individuals, product-related crises. You may wonder, how could an individual actually create a crisis? Let me share with you about an incident from Barings Bank, where the bank collapsed. Why? Because of a single rogue trader. So yes, there are numerous examples for us to learn from. I have learned from many. Let me share with you the names of a few that have helped me grow and learn. The Exxon Valdez oil spill, the Tisco fire, the Bhopal gas tragedy, the Pan Am crash, the Swaisahala fire, the BP oil spill, the terror attacks in Mumbai, in New York. What happened in Mumbai? You saw the employees of a luxury hotel play this out so well as the crisis unfolded. They definitely were trained. They definitely had practiced. They definitely were prepared. Similarly, you had the 9/11 terror attacks in New York, where the World Trade Center came down. And from what I've read, those who survived the attacks were largely those who had been through regular evacuation drills. I went through something similarly myself back in 1993 when I was working in Express Towers and there was a bomb explosion in the neighboring building and we had to evacuate. What helped was the fact that we had had numerous drills. And so you had an orderly evacuation. Everybody knew their role. Everybody knew what they had to do. You may wonder what kind of an impact a crisis could have. Well, besides bringing down an organization like it did the Barings Bank, it could cripple you for days and weeks and months. As recently as 2017, a major global corporation had its IT systems hacked. What was the impact? 870 million US dollars. 30,000 laptops and desktops and 7,500 servers were all down. Is there a formula to overcome a crisis? I don't think so. But yes, I'm sure that there is nothing to compensate for being prepared. Having said that, I also believe that the reality is that nothing prepares one for a crisis, and each crisis is different, and so you must be prepared for various scenarios. What can you do to be prepared? Do scenario planning, crisis simulation exercises, develop strategies for different types of crises, prepare a plan for each one of those. Decide what scenario means that you will be proactive, reactive, or maybe even just sit out the crisis. For of course, that too happens where a crisis dies a natural death. Make sure you regularly update the playbook that you have. Count on the experience of those who have dealt with crisis. Again, nothing compensates for experience and expertise. It reminds me of an old adage. If you think hiring an expert is expensive, try hiring an amateur. Maintain relationships in good times, for those will stand you good in bad times. Be ready for surprises. Be ready for the unexpected. Let me share with you from an example of what happened back in 1992 when Hurricane Andrew hit the US coast. The telephone companies at that time were struggling to resume operations. They had been prepared for this. They didn't have a shortage of any equipment, spare parts, nothing. And yet they were struggling to resume operations. Do you know why? It's something no one anticipated. It was that the daycare centers were not operational, and their employees needed to keep their children there. I'm sure that that is something none of us would have ever anticipated. So, my friends, being prepared helps you gain time. Make sure you have policy and standby statements ready. Make sure you update those regularly. Make sure you keep your company description ready. Have statistics ready. Plant numbers, statistics on personnel, capacity, financials. Even the work that you do in the community, have details of those. For all of that will help you buy time. Having said that, remember that you must regularly review these plans. Every crisis is different. And when one actually occurs, don't make the mistake of thinking that the playbook will have all the answers. No. You will have to innovate. You will have to make do on the go. Remember that a crisis, when it first breaks, it is the perception and feelings that are far more important, and that is where the role of communicators comes in. The audience is not really bothered about the facts, and it is up to us, communicators, communication professionals, to win the perception war. I would like to quote here from an article by Norman R. Augustine, which he wrote in the Harvard Business Review in 1995, where he said, "Almost every crisis contains within itself the seeds of success, as well as the roots of failure. Finding, cultivating, and harvesting that potential success is the essence of crisis management." Here are some ground rules for communications that we could follow in normal times as well as in crises. Take responsibility for your actions. Engage with the media. Remember that openness and responsiveness at all times with the media helps and more so during a crisis. It will enhance your respect and credibility with the media. Call back promptly if that's what you've told a journalist you will do. Use plain language, something that the reader will understand. Tell the truth. Always, always, always. Be consistent, and above all, be human. Never, ever cover up information. Never, ever give out inaccurate information. Never, ever assume that just because you have good relations with journalists, that will ensure that you get friendly coverage during a crisis. No, my fellow communicators. To the media, a crisis is an opportunity for a good story. It is an opportunity to discuss diverse aspects of the industry that you are involved in. And it is a test of your relationship with various stakeholders. The first few hours of a crisis are critical, and a crisis that is well managed will not only help you preserve the reputation of your organization and its credibility, but could also enhance it. It is key to remember that a crisis is not the time when you educate, but is the time when you communicate, and recovery will begin depending on the style in which you communicate. Depending on the nature of the crisis, publicize what has happened and how you are dealing with it as soon as possible. Describe the facts and the context as known to you at that point. Make more information available as soon as it becomes available. Do not speculate. Show concern for all involved. Make sure you inform your employees before the media as far as possible. Most important, make senior management visible early on in a crisis to demonstrate ownership and accountability. Of course, you could also choose to play ostrich and allow the crisis to flourish and grow. I can help you with tips for that too. Here's what you can do if you don't want to deal with the crisis. Choose to be reactive. Don't be proactive. Do nothing until the crisis becomes public. Sit down and rest knowing truth will triumph above all. Show no empathy. Focus on the issue. Ignore the feelings. Use jargon. The less your audience understands you, the better. Refuse to engage with the media and issue only written statements. Treat them like the enemy. Keep repeating what you do, but expect different results. Friends, I hope that you may never, ever have to deal with a crisis in your life. Thank you.